Steve, it is Monday. You are in your customary outfit. It must be one thing.
It's the podcast.
It's the triple B studio is back. Is
See,
that
we're
what?
gaining acceptance already.
No,
Traction.
we're not. We're not gaining acceptance. Uh, Hi Steve, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful.
Great.
Wonderfully.
You always say you're doing wonderful. I
This,
guess you're all
this is easy.
okay.
This is
Okay.
great. Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is the Stuff Summer Says podcast with
Steve.
Steve. Steve, we have a busy, hectic show on a busy, hectic week. That's all I'm gonna say. But I would make sure you are subscribed to the newsletter that's gonna go out later this week, following preferably me on social, but also maybe Steve on social. But for me, for a big announcement, huge, massive announcement coming Wednesday.
Well, I'm glad I'm following. I can't wait.
And
Is it
we
midday? Is it morning?
I
Is
don't know
there a
yet. I
time?
haven't
Like
figured
ticket
that out.
announcements come at like 10 o'clock in the morning for concerts.
We're gonna well, we do need to thank you for reminding me. We do need to discuss that.
Oh,
All right. Anyways, so we've got that. We've got a couple other things. We've got Johnny McGonigal from PennLive on the show. We're excited to chat with him. Go ahead and take a listen to that interview. After that, we will discuss a couple things, including concerts, title games, open practices, and the Pirates game I went to on Saturday. Are you
that's a
excited?
list. I can't wait.
Okay. All right. All right. Go ahead and listen to Johnny. Steve, we have been joined by many of your colleagues at the Daily Collegian, but I think this is the first time we've been joined by one of my colleagues at the Daily
Nice.
Collegian.
Turn the tables. Cool.
Good old Johnny McGonigal joins us of Penn Live fame. Of Johnny, let's just start here. Is there a paper in the state of Pennsylvania you haven't written for?
Oh man, Darian. Thanks first of all for having me, guys. It's a pleasure. And I mean, look, I've worked for a handful of places throughout this great state, this great Commonwealth, from Philly to Pittsburgh to in between now. But it's been a wild ride, and I've really enjoyed working at Penn Live now for just over a year. First season back being last season, and it's been a lot of fun.
Let's start there. I think you are, relatively on the beat of the more established full-time beat writers, one of the younger guys. You are also working with two of kind of the older guys in Bob and Dave Jones. What is it like working with them, and what have you learned from them already?
It's been quite an experience, and I mean that in a positive way. I've known Bob a good bit over the years, even as a student, working at the Collegian, talking to him in the press box, and always super approachable, really nice, and one of those guys that, when I was covering Penn State for the Center Daily Times and going out, at the time to Chicago for Big Ten Media Days, and Bob would be one where he's like, all right, we're going to this bar, everyone meet up, we're all going to hang out. Billy Goat Tavern nights in Chicago, some cheap beer and some good times. And so Bob has always been about the vibes, and he's a good reporter too, and knows what he's doing. Obviously been covering Penn State for a very long time. And so when he gave me the call initially, he's the one who called me and said, hey, we want you to come on to Penn Live and join our team. And I was honestly a little surprised because I didn't know I didn't know they had an opening, didn't know that it was something that they'd be interested in. But as soon as I got a call from Bob and we started talking about it, it just kind of fit and made sense. And Dave's been great too. I've roomed with Dave a few times this past season, quite an experience. But the first road trip out of Purdue, me and him just sat at a bar by our hotel for a few hours and just talked shop. And we had always stayed in touch and had talked throughout the years, but I learned more in that 3-hour conversation about Dave Jones than I learned in any previous years speaking to him. And so obviously a guy who's been around the block and wealth of knowledge. And so gleaning anything I can from those two, it's been really good. Just a solid team, as well as Joe Hermit, who's one of the best in the biz as our photographer.
One of my favorite people on the planet. Always fun to look for Joe on game day. It's the highlight of my game day. I guess you have worked in Pittsburgh, you have worked now in Harrisburg, Philly, the Collegian, here, there, and everywhere. Of kind of your professional career, not that the Collegian wasn't our professional career because we took it very seriously. What what is different about Penn Live kind of than the other places that you have worked in, and what are you really, enjoying about, and does it relate to the content and who is reading the content?
It's an interesting question because, look, I think when I was covering Penn State for the Center Daily Times, you always have kind of perceptions of what it would be like to work at other places. And, knowing Greg Pickle, he used to work at Penn Live, and I saw the hours that he was putting in sometimes and just churning out content. But I'll say this, like, there's always a part of being a beat writer where you have to do that. And that's a part of the gig. But what I've been really not surprised, because this is how they pitched it to me and how they told me things would go. But it's been kind of similar to my experience at the Post-Gazette covering Pitt, which has been like, hey, your editor, my editor at Penn Live, Chris Hopkins, great guy, pretty hands off. Like, they trust you to do the job the way, one, it should be done, and two, how you feel it should be done, and the different story angles. Like, they're not really overbearing or pushing you to do a certain thing or a certain type of thing, certain type of story. Like, I've had the freedom to do the kind of feature stories and the in-depth stuff that I've really loved to do, and reason why I really do this. And so that's been a real plus, because I knew that the external factors of Penn Live making that move, being able to move back home to Philly, was a big driving factor in that. But the way that they were able to sell me on the fact that, hey, you're going to be able to do the beat and do the job the way you want to do it. And it's been pretty similar to my experience at the Post-Gazette and even at the Center Daily Times.
Is that your goal? Is that, to me, knowing you personally, like, that is, I've always really seen you in this position. I can only think of Johnny covering, the Penn State football team and really nothing else. That was why even when you went to cover Pitt, it was so bizarre to me. Do you think you're gonna do you want to continue growing and become national? What's next for Johnny McGonigal, I guess is what we're asking.
Yeah, look, I really enjoy covering Penn State football. I enjoy, even the little things about beat writing, like getting to know a team, getting to know assistant coaches, analysts, walk-ons, like that kind of stuff. I do really like to get to know who I'm covering on a daily basis and on a weekly and seasonally basis. Would I like to one day be like a national, whether it's a columnist or features writer? That'd be great. I do want to stay in college football, whatever I do. That's kind of what I knew, honestly, my sophomore year at the Collegian. Because I came to Penn State initially as like a broadcast journalism major. And I was, touring schools with broadcast in mind, Mizzou and Syracuse and all that. But when I got to Penn State as a freshman, I'm like, look, I love writing. I did like the high school TV show, the morning show. I like doing that. I like talking. So I'm like, I'm going to join Com Radio, PSN TV, and the Collegian. And I'll just see which one kind of pans out and see which one I gravitate towards. And I just gravitated towards the Collegian, and then gradually gravitated towards covering college football. And so that's what I like to do. And I don't see that changing. Now, whether that role is, whether that's a Penn Live, or just in general, whether that's going national at some point, maybe. I could also see myself covering Penn State for a long time, because I do really like it. I like football weekends in Happy Valley. I like, walking into Beaver Stadium as my home office, essentially. It's not a bad place to be, minus the rickety press box that feels like it's going to, snap in half and fall over onto a bunch of people when Nick Singleton makes an 80-yard run. But yeah, I like what I do, and I can't complain about it.
Was there a difference as a beat writer, between covering Pitt and Penn State in terms of access, how you were treated, what you could do? Like, what is the difference? What was the difference between those two things?
Yeah, look, in terms of like I mentioned with Penn Live and Post-Gazette, being able to do the job I want to do is pretty similar, but the actual beat end of it, like the inner workings of it, were very starkly different. Because think about it, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is such an institution, not only within the city, but regionally and nationally. And there are some really good people that cover Pitt, but it's a much smaller beat. And at the Post-Gazette, you're, if not the looked at as like the beat writer on Pitt, but you're one of those people. And for road trips, for example, covering Pitt, you're one of maybe like 3 or 4 beat writers that travels. And so for bowl games, for even like the game at Duke, like, seeing players and coaches at the team hotel and stuff like that, it's more, I don't know if intimate is the right word, or, more, it's easier to get to know people that way. I feel like. And so you definitely get more access as well. Just comparing right now what we're going through, we're sitting here in mid-August. We just got back from a post practice interview with Penn State. We get one of those a week, and we do get a handful of players, and that's nice. With Pitt, we got, I think it was 4 times a week. Now, the thing there though is that, Pitt is in a city where it's not even the biggest football team in the city, because you've got the Steelers and you've got the Pirates, you got the Penguins, you got all these, competing, they're not competing directly on the field or the ice or anything, but in terms of people's eyeballs and people's attention, Pitt knows that opening things up, opening the doors up, more interviews, one-on-ones, practice availabilities, whatever they can do to get more eyeballs on the program is going to be in their best interest. Whereas for Penn State, they're so established and they have so many people that cover the team that, not saying they don't feel the need to open things up a little bit, but they kind of don't have to really if they don't want to. And that's not me complaining about the access that we get at Penn State by any means. It's just different. It's a different dynamic, and it forces you to do your job a little bit differently too.
So a question related to that, but then content. Was your content any better because of more access? And then how does the more fish feeding for the access change the kind of content you're trying to produce to get something to move the needle?
Yeah, look, at the Post-Gazette, I felt like sometimes like the everyday stuff it feels more exclusive if you're one of 10 people in a room as opposed to one of 100 at a media day, for example. So, in terms of trying to differentiate yourself on the Penn State beat, it's part of the reason why, at least I've been told, because I, friends with my former editor at the Post-Gazette, one of the reasons why I got the job in the first place apparently was my ability to differentiate my coverage when I was at the Center Daily Times and just doing different things, out of the box things, whether that was literally driving the extra mile to Saquon's hometown and talking to all these different kind of people, or whatever that may have been. There are certain restrictions in terms of the Penn State beat, and you've got so many really talented people on the Penn State beat doing that job and looking for those stories as well. So you feel like you have to work outside the box a little bit to get the kind of stories and the kind of features and everything that you kind of want to do. Whereas at Pitt, it was just like my job itself was a little bit easier because I could go up and say, hey, can I get so-and-so for 15 minutes after practice today? And they might say, yeah, after practice today doesn't work, and your head will drop. And it's like, but tomorrow works. I'm like, okay, cool. Awesome. Sounds good. And again, I think that goes along with the idea that for Pitt, as much coverage as possible is great for them, especially at a place like the Post-Gazette. So whereas Penn State, they've got so many other people and so many beat writers and a lot of national people wanting to do things. Whereas I can't go up to, Greg Kincaid or Chris Peterson after practice today and say, hey, can I get Olu Fashanu for, 20 minutes tomorrow? Like that, it just doesn't work that way. And so there are positives and negatives to both of those, I'd say.
I guess the main question for me along the Pitt versus Penn State questioning that I want to ask is, what is the difference between working with James Franklin or covering James Franklin and covering Pat Narduzzi? And do you have any stories there, Johnny?
Yeah, look, I'll say this. Like, I really enjoyed covering Pitt for the 3 years that I covered them. Covered them the 2019, 2020, and 2021 season. 2020 for obviously everyone was a little weird, and trying to cover a college football team during COVID was not fun. I'm sure playing football during COVID was not fun. But I did get to know, Pat Narduzzi well. I feel like we built a kind of a rapport. There are some sneaking similarities between the two. Like, even if it's just like, Pat Narduzzi not wanting to talk about injuries. I would always press him on it anyway. And sometimes he would give you something, sometimes he wouldn't. And I think it's kind of similar with James, where he definitely doesn't want to talk about injuries, but part of the job is having to ask. And sometimes, like, if you don't ask, like, he won't tell you. Like, for example, today after practice, we're sitting here Monday on the 14th of August, and he says, yeah, Smith Vilbert, he had a season-ending injury. This happened like months ago. But it's like, so if you don't want to, you basically have to ask about that. And otherwise, coaches across the country won't tell you about injuries. But I guess the one Pat Narduzzi story, though, and this is kind of like probably my favorite experience from covering Pitt, was being at Kenny Pickett's draft party. I got in, basically, got the green light to go to that because I got to know Kenny's dad really well over the 3 years that I covered Pitt. And so I'm rolling up to Asbury Park, New Jersey, and I don't know where I'm going to be for this draft party. It's at like a bar. And I'm thinking I'll be in the back somewhere, might not even be in the main room. Cause how like the ESPN cameras like focus in on, the draftee and the family and all that kind of stuff. Well, it turns out they put me like right next to those ESPN cameras. And I'm like, okay, like this is pretty sick. And so I'm just waiting for Kenny to get drafted. And when he does, by the Steelers, turns out like they go to commercial break, ESPN. And so I tweeted out a video of Kenny getting drafted. And getting the call from Mike Tomlin and tweeting it before like Schefter or Rappaport or any of those guys had it, and before ESPN had come back from break. And so Steelers fans on Twitter knew. But catching Narduzzi's reaction to that was like it was the purest joy in the world. And then after it, we talked for like 20 minutes, and 10 of it was on the record, 10 of it was off the record. And so that's I just feel like being able to cover him for a few years. Kenny Pickett's draft party is a little bit different than like a Monday press conference, but I feel like I got to know him pretty well. And, some of the, whether it's Twitter stereotypes or whatever people want to put on him, some of it is true and some of it's not. And I don't know. I think he was a good dude to cover. And I think James is too. Like I like covering college football. And so you put a coach in front of me, I'm going to ask him questions and I'm going to try and get to know them. But I really enjoyed covering Pitt, and it was a good experience.
When you went away, covered Pitt, and then you come back, you
Went
covered
away.
Penn State. Yeah, went away. It sounds like we sent you to Siberia.
Yeah.
We did not send Johnny to Siberia. When you deviated isn't the right word either. When you took a turn towards Pitt to cover Pitt, you come back. Prior to that, you had covered Penn State for probably 4 to 5 seasons and pretty much all of James Franklin's career up to that point. Did you and James have to kind of reestablish your rapport? Do you feel like you're still reestablishing that, or did he kind of remember that conversation, those conversations in those moments prior? Or do you feel like now that you're at PennLive, it's easier for you to have those as opposed to at the Collegian?
It's interesting because I feel like some days it's like when I'll ask a question, there's like not a game recognized game, but it's like, oh, hey, how are like a familiarity there. And then some days it might just be his mood on the particular day after a practice. There's some days where I'm like, oh yeah, it's like kind of slipped right back in. Like the shoe still fits and we're rolling. And then some days, I probably speak to anyone on the beat and they would tell you that some days, it's just not there. It was interesting though, because like you said, like you mentioned, I covered James's first year because that was 2014. And that was my senior year. So I was interning with the Philadelphia Daily News while still working at the Collegian as a sports editor. But like I was there in Ireland for the first game, the Sam Ficken field goal. And throughout that entire season, I didn't cover them in 2015 because Jordan Rodriguez was covering them for the Center Daily Times. She does a great job covering the Rams now and doing a whole bunch of other stuff for The Athletic. She was at the Center Daily Times covering Penn State. And so I started out at the CDT in 2015 doing high school sports, really for like a year and a half. And then I didn't get back on the beat until mid-season of 2016. So Jordan ended up taking a job to cover the Carolina Panthers with the Charlotte Observer, which is within the McClatchy network. I think they still are. I'm not 100% sure. But she left midseason for that gig. And then they just looked at me and they said, all right, Johnny, you want to step up? And, you've done this before. You've covered Franklin, you've covered Penn State. Because I covered O'Brien's second season as a junior at the Collegiate. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in 100%. First game back was the 2016 Ohio State upset. So it was a great way to get back into the swing of things. And I think in that 2016 season, obviously winning the Big Ten title, 2017, they had a lot of success too. Getting to know Franklin and a lot of the players and a lot of the coaches and the parents. But then when you come back, I think the biggest transition was, assistant coach X, Y, and Z isn't here anymore. Parent XYZ isn't here anymore. So it's about reestablishing yourself with sources. And you do that, not only with current players and the current staff, but, recruiting, because I do think that's one thing that PennLive focuses on that I would do like recruiting features here and there with like the Post-Gazette and stuff like that, but not as consistently as I probably should have, honestly, that I'm doing more now with PennLive. And so I feel like that's been a benefit, though, getting to know, the high school coaches in PA and the areas of Penn State's recruiting, which now is nationally, but then getting to know, players' parents and stuff like that. And so I think that's a part of the process too.
Particularly with the feature writing, I think that is what you are strongest at. That's what I know you for. That's what I read you for still to this day. Why do you enjoy that so much? Why has that always kind of been your bread and butter?
I just like talking to people, and I like getting to know where people came from. Darian, from the Collegiate office, I don't shut up. I really don't. And I think that's a really cool part of what I'm able to do and what so many other people are able to do, not only on this beat, but in this business, is to just talk to people and get to know people. And I have a real penchant or a real, I really enjoy the origin story. And so whether that's, I mentioned earlier, I did one on Saquon Barkley going to Whitehall. And, this past fall when I was driving out to, I guess it was the Michigan game, stopping along the way in Medina, Ohio to talk to, Drew Aller's high school people and, getting a tour and seeing the signs of Drew around the gymnasium and stuff like that. I just enjoy that kind of stuff. And it's not just the player profile origin story either. It's obviously a lot of other stuff I'm working on, and a big Adisa Isaac story that's going to come out here in a week or two. Some people may have saw the CBS Sports feature that was done on him, with him having 3 nonverbal siblings and a single mother and his journey to Penn State. I'm kind of fleshing that out and blowing that out a little bit. But it's those kind of stories that, humanize the players, and whether it's about a player or a coach or whatever, because so much of it is, hey, Saquon Barkley just made that 47-yard run, or Adisa Isaac just had that sack that changed the game. And so many people only know the players as number 26 or number 20 or number 15. But I like to kind of put not only a face, but a story to the name and the number. And I've kind of always been that way. And so I don't see that changing anytime soon either.
You mentioned the broadcast journey is kind of why you got into it, or why you came to Penn State. I'm curious, in terms of origin stories, what were your influences? Why broadcasting? Why sports writing? Why are you here doing this now? What were the things you consumed and influenced you to be doing this?
I read a lot of Sports Illustrated as a kid, a lot of Sports Illustrated. And that was my dream, in high school, was to either be on ESPN, which I feel like every sports fan at some point, or at least a lot of sports fans, especially people in this industry, when you realize that you're not going to be the catcher for the Phillies, you want to be the one talking about it. I thought I was going to get there at some point, and I absolutely wasn't. And I wasn't going to play guard for the Eagles either, because I was too small. But I knew I wanted to get into sports pretty much in high school. And that was a part of me. We had a TV program at our high school, Salesianum in Wilmington, Delaware, alma mater Troy Reeder and Andrew Zerba, former Penn State football players, and got to represent those guys. But no, I just knew I wanted to get into it then. And so I opted for broadcast because I enjoyed doing the high school TV station so much, but I also really enjoyed writing. I was in all the, AP English Lit, all that kind of stuff. I was like a bookworm, and was always soaking that stuff up. And So I knew I wanted to write or be on camera. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, just the joining of the three, student, organizations. And I know PSN TV and Com Radio, they, so many people have come out of those programs and do great work. But the Collegian, I don't know. I just got down with those people. It was just so much fun from the jump. And it was interesting because my freshman year was the scandal and Sandusky and the Paterno and everything that happened with that. They didn't have me on the front lines, doing any reporting on that, but I was upstairs in the Collegian. Darian, I'm sure you've slept on those couches and more upstairs, pouring through the archives and just pulling out like old newspaper clippings of, major, Paterno and Penn State, milestones and wins and moments and being around that newsroom early, during all of that and watching everyone work. I'm like, one, this is a well-oiled machine. And two, this is what I want to do. Just like the hustle and bustle and it was stressful for those people, I'm sure. I'm kind of glad I could leave at a certain time and go back to my dorm and not have to worry about, putting together a paper that night or putting together coverage for all of that. But kind of seeing that firsthand was like a really good introduction, I feel like, to what I eventually knew I wanted to do.
I guess speaking of the Collegian, particularly, this is three Collegian alums, and everybody that comes on this podcast that has worked for the Collegian has those stories and has those moments. Why is the Collegian so important to you?
I think like the first part of it is just like the camaraderie of everyone, because you're all in it for the same goal, and that's to put out the best product possible, while also really enjoying yourself, because you're college kids, right? But at the same time, you feel some kind of responsibility to do the job the right way. And, even if you weren't going to pursue journalism, you still felt like an obligation to do things the right way and to not let anyone down. It was always, in my experience there, it was, as James Franklin would say, I'll pull one of his cliches out, everyone pulling the rope in the same direction. And I felt that from the jump at the Collegian. And that's why, when I was fortunate enough to be like an editor there for a couple of semesters, I was like, all right, we got to be on that. We got to be doing the same thing. And so, yeah, I just felt like, and plus it was just a lot of fun, like really good people. And I spent way more time at the Collegian than I did in the classroom. I was still Dean's List student. My parents would kill me if I wasn't. But I knew that, even Steve might not want to hear this, but there were some times where it was like, all right, assignment in the classroom or chase a story for the Collegian. And more often than not, I would ask for forgiveness on the classroom work and chase a story. It felt like a job, but it felt like it was like, but it felt like it's something that you could also just really enjoy and kick back and teach too. Cause like that was my favorite part of it, being an editor, was being able to teach people stuff.
Yeah. No, 100% on that. I was not Dean's List. I can't confirm I was not Dean's
Come on,
List.
really?
No, I was not. Hey, I graduated with a 3.0. That's what I wanted to graduate with.
Okay.
Too many nights sleeping on the Collegian couch.
Too many nights sleeping on the Collegian couch. The one other thing that I want to particularly ask you about, Johnny, is something a little bit relevant to today's news. The AP poll is out. You have an AP vote. For our listeners, explain what that process is like. How do you get the ballot, or how do you even get a vote? One, and then two, how do you submit your votes? What is your approach to submitting those votes? Kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough that it was 3 years ago, before the 2021 season, that Will Graves, he's the AP writer in Pittsburgh, does a great job. He approached me during, I think it might have been spring camp of 2021 for Pitt, or just before training camp. But he was just like, hey, we have, an AP vote in Pennsylvania. You do some good work, and you have a good head on your head and all that, head on your shoulders. And we'd like you to have it. I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm down. Now, I didn't find out until like a few weeks later that it's the only vote in the state of Pennsylvania. So that was like, oh crap, like that's kind of sick. And so having that, kind of given to me, and obviously, like, look, the AP poll, it's fun. It ultimately, the college football playoff rankings matter most. I'm not blind to that, but it was an honor to get it, and so I put a lot of work into it. Like, I don't like, without naming names, I know there are voters for, I'm sure the coaches poll too, that they delegate to someone else to put it together, and I'm sure there are voters in the AP poll that might not. Spend hours poring over, highlights and reading stories. But that's basically what I do. Like, during the season, I get back from Beaver Stadium at whatever time. If it's a night game, God bless me. And I'm up for 3-4 more hours after I'm done working on my Penn State stuff, to just read everything I can and make sure I'm not ranking, one team above the other, based on what happened that Saturday and based on what happened the Saturdays before. So the actual process, it's just like a link that you go into, and it's like a little like drop down. You just like type in the team 1 through 25, and you can fix it, whichever way you want. And I don't know if you guys ever watched the league, but Ruxin in the league, always tinkering with his fantasy football team. That was me, and that is me all the time with my AP poll. But I try to obviously have fun with it. And every Sunday morning I have a piece that comes out, which is like, hey, here's my top 25. Here's my thinking on all these. Here's why. Because it's one of those where so many people are still interested and they want to know, people love to argue about rankings. That's just what people love to do. And I remember in grade school and high school, I was a college football nut, and I would always just be like, why is Virginia Tech, at 19? They don't deserve to be preseason ranked. But so people care about this stuff. And so that's why I do take it seriously, but I also like to have fun with it.
Have you experienced the bad side, being called out on Twitter? And does it get ugly?
Oh yeah. Like today, I experienced a good side of it because I didn't realize this until I'll give him a shout out. I think it was Connor Hooley, one of our collegian alum, a good friend, pointed out to me that James Madison only got 1 vote in the AP poll, and that was me. I put him at 25. And James Madison's football account actually tweeted saying hey, we got 1 vote in the AP poll, and they were hype. And I was just like, hey, yeah, that's me. What's up? And so I got some love from James Madison fans just being like, thanks for ranking us. But there are the opposite end too. There were, especially part of it was when I was covering Pitt, being a Penn State grad and covering Pitt, there's a lot that goes into that. We can talk about that in a second. But the AP poll specifically, if I didn't have Pitt ranked, in the preseason, or if I didn't have them high enough, I thought I was always fair with it, always straightforward, and because I did the explainers when I was at the Post-Gazette too. But there was always some pushback there, and there's pushback everywhere. You'll find yourself on Reddit and to be like, oh, why does Johnny McGonigal at Penn State have so so there's always that.
Well, that's what the explainers are for, though, right? If you're going to do that's what makes it. If you're going to do it, you have to do the explainers, or to do it in silence is to do it incorrectly. And the James Madison at 25 is why 25 exists. I mean, 25 doesn't exist for the. It may exist for the 25th best team in the country, but 25 also exists for 27 to 29, right? For somebody to put them 25, so there's some discussion, and they're a top 25 team.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I just saw that in the official AP poll, preseason poll that came out, Iowa was 25, and that is the most boring number 25 I've ever seen in my life.
Very on brand for them.
Just super on brand. It's they've got a great punter and a great kicker and a crappy offense. That's the number 25 team in the country. No, give me
25. So it's got to be 25 points a game. Isn't that the thing? Is it 20? Is it 25 or 24?
Yeah, that's what it is.
I think it's 25 or 24. What a high bar they set for Brian Ferentz. But no, yeah, and so normally with my 25 spot, I like to have fun with it. And early last season, I think it was UTSA, and they just kept rising. And I was in Tulane. I think I was the first voter last year to put Tulane in the top 10. And I'm like, they're good. And then they go out and they beat USC. So it's a lot of fun when your rankings and your picks and stuff pan out really well. When I had Texas A&M super high last season, like a lot of people, and then they go and crap the bed like they did. You look like an idiot, but a lot of people look like idiots on Texas A&M every single season.
That's what Texas A&M is there for.
Exactly.
All right, Johnny. Well, we have taken enough of your time this evening. We want to thank you. What do you want to plug? This is your moment to shine.
Yeah, no, I mean, subscribe to PennLive. That'd be great for me. If you're able to, click on one of my stories, and then, if you want to read it and it's behind a paywall, which we do have, subscribe through that, because then I get credit for it. That'd be sick. But stories specifically, that Adisa Isaac story that I mentioned, that's coming out, really happy with how those interviews turned out, and think it'll be a story, about a player, like I said, that you put a face and a story to a player that is going to have a really good season, and it's going to have a huge impact in whether or not Penn State is able to get over this hump and get to the college football playoff, which I do think they do, by the way. And yeah, so that story, follow me on Twitter, McGonigal9, and all that good stuff.
All right, Johnny.
Hey, wait, who's your favorite band?
Favorite band?
Yeah.
Favorite living band is Weezer. Favorite dead/broken up band is Led Zeppelin.
So how much would you pay as a get-in price to see Weezer at Beaver Stadium?
At Beaver Stadium, I've seen them like 5 times, but to see them at Beaver Stadium would be pretty sick. First, I would try to get a credential and then take the credential off and then go into the stands, or even sneak onto the field or the floor, whatever. But no, I'd pay a few $100.
A few $100. Let me go, Darren. You young guys have more spending awareness or ability than cheapo me.
I think we're just idiots with our money, Steve.
Exactly.
Okay.
It is discussed later in the podcast. There might be a big concert announcement coming this week. Anyways, Steve thinks that you can get into a concert for under $100 of a stadium venue, and I don't think, especially with the artist.
Stadium venue. I'm going to see Nickelback, somewhat ironically, for $20 in a couple weeks. That's gonna be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I say somewhat ironically because I kind of like them, but I also
we know. Oh, I know.
We're in on the joke though too. Darren.
Yeah, we're it's. As again, folks, there's a lot of experiences you share at the Collegian. We'll just put it that way. And one of them is a love for Nickelback. All right. This was awesome, Johnny. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We will talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Steve, we will begin our discussion portion of the evening with some news today. Potential news that is coming, it would appear, soon. This is unconfirmed, unofficial, but based on people putting it together on Twitter, including myself, it would appear that Luke Combs is coming.
So you're reporting on yourself?
Yes, I'm reporting on myself. Yes.
Okay.
We're that type of institution now. It would appear that Luke Combs is coming to Beaver Stadium. It would appear that way.
Wow, I haven't been paying attention.
Okay, so here's what happened. There was this really cryptic, weird tweet with this guy. It's got a beard and a hat on.
Saw it. Yep.
Then it got deleted. It was still on the Instagram story. I grabbed a screenshot of it, pieced it together with some help of some other people. Allegedly, I'm doing I feel like I'm doing the Pepe Silva. Do you know what Pepe Silva is?
I'm still with you.
Okay. Still with me. Allegedly, that is Luke Combs's logo. So why would Go PSU Sports send that out if it wasn't the stadium? Like, they normally don't announce BJC concerts, and I feel like he's doing a stadium tour or is in part of one. Or
he is indeed. It's true.
And also could fill. So I go to
wait, he's a country guy. You know Luke Combs?
Well, I know of him. So
okay.
This brings me to I go to our resident country expert, Steve. Steve, will you spend money if Luke Combs comes to town?
Depends on how much money it costs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, depends on how much it is. He's a better get than Blake Shelton was for the very first Beaver Stadium 100%. Jam. Just a better, but in all honesty, they did just an okay job with that. Like they didn't sell as many tickets as they thought they were going to. It was kind of a cluster mess. So I mean, we'll get close. Will I buy tickets? Depends how much they cost. Like, I'm not going to shell out $100 to see him.
I feel like you got to pay at least $100 to get in the door, Steve.
No.
You know how much tickets cost these days to concerts?
I did. I just bought tickets last week at 10:01 a.m. in the morning to go to Pittsburgh to see a country artist. So yes.
Who?
Ashley McBride.
Of course it's Ashley McBride. I don't know why I asked.
Hey, well, here's your trivia. Here's the trivia that links those two things. The opening act for Luke Combs the last time he was here when he played the Jordan Center.
Ashley McBride.
I know, does it hurt to say it? It shouldn't. No, I mean, I guess it depends on how much it costs. Like, because he's good, but he's not going to roam. I mean, he's going to walk a little bit, but he's not going to entertain. He's got a good catalog of music. 50 or so bucks to get in for me.
Okay. Let's span to macro non-Steve opinion view. You would agree that more people will go see him in concert than Blake Shelton. I know I know who Blake Shelton is only because he's married or engaged or whatever to Gwen Stefani. I know who Luke Combs is and could hum one song, actually two songs, one of which is a cover.
Right.
So
that's true. In the past 3 months, right?
Yeah.
No, but he's a good get. If it's him at the stadium, it's the right person in the venue. Logically, in terms of executing it, they're going to have to up their game. And now it's a totally different administration and whatever else. But the last time it was not super.
Here's what I wonder, and I don't remember this. Maybe you do. Who put on the production? Because I think that probably maybe had something to do with it. Because if it was like, look at Beyonce or Taylor Swift, like they put on their own production, and I would assume Luke Combs is doing the same thing. So I feel like that's a better value. You're going to get
it was
better
a repeat.
Experience.
It was a repeat model. It was a guy from Iowa who was like the quarterback's brother or something like that, and they had done like 4 other stadium concerts. Like, so when they were leading up to that announcement, it was pretty easy to figure out who that was going to be too. So I think that was okay. It was the first time for Penn State. They did the right thing. They had something the day before, and they should here too, right? They should. I mean, I missed this today, but man, if they do that, they should bring in the acts from the brewery who are getting kicked out, like on a little stage the night before, right? And just do like a small concert the night before. It's kind of like when you have the outdoor game in hockey and you've already set the thing up. Go ahead and do a couple little things. You're there, No, I'm hopeful for it. It's the right guy. We'll see what time. I mean, there's only a certain couple times a year it can be, right? And they always announce these things 7 months out, 8 months out. So it's next spring sometime if it happens, early summer. No, people will love it. People will flock here for it because he draws and he's big, and they've got the potential to be really good if they can pull it off.
Yeah, I hope it works because it didn't feel like it worked last time, and I hope it works this time so that other acts can say, okay, I can come to State College and sell out a stadium. I think we would both go see Bruce there. I think that would be one. Billy Joel's
done, right? The next bigger ones are Kenny Chesney maybe, but Combs might be as big anymore in terms of what it is, and Garth Brooks is probably not. It is bigger, but it's kind of anymore with the politics of some stuff of his stuff. I just don't know that if you're, Luke Combs is safe.
Yeah, fair. That's fair. Okay. I wanted to ask you about that. We didn't talk about the brewery. I am upset about the brewery. I will just leave it there.
Did you sign the petition?
I did sign the petition. Did you sign the petition?
I did not. And I'm not even going to tell you the other thing that I have that's connected to the brewery because you'll be mad at me. So just never mind.
That noise, I make that noise a lot when I work with Steve.
Somebody came out with a song last week called Cool Little Bars. And it almost sounds like, no, but it almost looks like the inside of the brewery. It's kind of like an ode to those kind of places.
And I'm guessing it's Ashley McBride.
It's hard to believe, but yes.
Do you love Ashley McBride or Pink more? Like, you could only listen to one for the rest of your life.
Only listen to. No, Ashley McBride. Now see, here's the difference. I can afford Ashley McBride tickets. So I understand that's saying something about the level, but I couldn't afford Pink in Pittsburgh, and it wasn't worth it to go see the stadium, which gets me back to Luke Combs, because I'm not going to pay $250 to go see a concert. I'm just not. At least you didn't make a noise. You're holding it in. Good for you.
Oh boy. All right. Moving on. Did you see the other news today that Penn State's going to play Ball State again? That's the other big news today.
Are they really? Woohoo! Can't wait for those
2028. Those tickets will be under $100. I assure you, Steve.
Yes,
well, who knows? 2028 is a long way away, and inflation could really
and
change.
if you buy the extra add-ons for the autograph session and the NIL stuff, it might get you up there.
Moving on, other things in the future. The Big Ten title game might be moving. Also to a football stadium, which it should always be played into a football stadium.
Good.
This one, though, is a little interesting and intriguing to me. This one reported from frontofficesports.com. They are saying that the people at Allegiant Stadium out in Vegas and the Big Ten are kind of having some early talks about moving the conference championship out there. Much like I said last week during expansion talk and everything else, I think this is one of those ones that just absolutely screws over every fan, especially in the Big Ten, when you consider that the current location and then another, I think maybe current or future location with Minneapolis are all within reasonable driving distance for most of the schools. There are 2 schools of the, what's going to be 18 that are within driving distance by the time that this happens. And who knows, maybe even more. And I, I don't know, like let's like thinking about it logically from the fan perspective, if my team is going, especially in the current Big Ten state, if my team is going to the Big Ten title game at the way that with probably not having divisions and 12 teams getting into the playoff, I'm probably looking at least another chance at seeing that team play again in the playoff, right? So that's another game. That's your bowl game, if you will. But that's also going to come a week or two after the conference championship. There's a chance that if they're a top 8 team, I'm going to have to fly to a destination to see them. And there's a chance that if they win, then there's a semifinal game. And then if they win again, there's a national title game. We're looking at easy 10 grand to 10, at least 10 grand to experience all of those games. I am not that. So this whole point of me saying is I'm not going to Vegas to watch Penn State play in a Big Ten title unless I win the lottery, I think.
And I would like to think you're alone in that. Well, I would like to say think there's more people that feel that way. And I guess there are, but I guess the first part is nobody cares about the fans. They're putting on TV shows from different venues where they can get money, right? And where they think they're going to sell some tickets. They're going to get people are going to make a road trip to Vegas because you can get a cheap flight, right? So people are going to be
on a week's notice.
Maybe not. That's fair. Well, you can
in like a hotel that is respectable in Vegas. I mean, you could get a very cheap hotel in Vegas.
Right.
But that's
no, it doesn't. But they don't care. Nobody cares about the fans. People say, oh, they don't. They're putting on TV shows and they're doing stuff. They're creating tonnage of content, and they don't care about the fans. And the fans aren't bright enough to not show up. And Penn State fans haven't been not bright enough to show up since 2000. What was the game at Indiana where they scored at the goal line, right? Barely to respectably win. And then they came back to play Michigan State at home in the cold weather. They sucked that year. And the place is still sold out for a sucky team. And people showed up. I'm like, nobody wants to vote with their backsides and not show up and support the program. And it's just not going to happen. People are going to go to Vegas from Penn State or wherever it is.
I really think it's going to happen. I think, especially if you know that, let's say, okay, I would project Penn State to be an 8 seed, right? So that puts them in the top be top 4 seed or a top 6 seed. I guess I don't know what the math is, but that puts them going to a bowl game. It skips the on-campus game. Yep. So now I've got from Frederick, Maryland, or State College, PA, or wherever you're listening to this podcast, got to fly from here to Florida, Texas, California, and then knowing that really only about 8 stadiums right now can conveniently host and hold that game, the title game. I said this when the playoff expanded. I think I would skip the semifinal game if gun to my head, like that's how it would play out type thing, because I don't know. I just don't think, again, and I think that's a problem. I think your point is 100% correct, but I think it's a problem because that is the essential part of the college football experience puzzle is the fans. Like that is what makes college football uniquely different from the NFL. And I think things like this and little things like this and little things like, even more sponsors on games. God, I sound like you. It really just starts to wear down the momentum of all of that, and we are now in a diet NFL culture of sitting here on our couch watching and consuming all of these games because it's much cheaper, it's better, it's easier for me as a fan to do that.
Yeah, and it's yes, 100%. And it's just it's the contrived. You'll see the contrived stuff with the fans, and like the Taco Bell student section at the national championship game every year when they got like 100 students. Oh, we gave the ticket students. We gave them these crappy tickets. We could put the camera on them and say they're the best students we could get here from their school, and we gave them tickets. But who knows how they got there transportation wise and whatever else. No, the Big Ten's going to take the money from the sponsoring entity, town, arena, convention group, convention bureau, adventure bureau, whoever, if it were here, whoever, to get people to like more people to come there on a week's notice. No, it might be tougher. And I mean, that's why I'm glad, you know, I mean, I was blessed. I had mine in 2016, right? My brother and some friends drive out. We're driving out Interstate 80. You get the BS and the talking and the whatever else out Interstate 80. And you stop at a hotel that's still 4 hours from Indianapolis because you drove through the night and you're going to get up at dark 30 from wherever it was, Western Ohio, and drive to Indianapolis to get there and get a spot and then walk around the town. I've had my Big Ten championship game, and it's great if everybody could get that. And it's a shame because fewer people are going to get it with stuff like this because it's just the road trip, the whatever else. You're going to Vegas. It's not the same as checking out Indy or checking out Minneapolis or whatever else. It's just not.
Well, the other thing is like, I think part of the appeal of Indy is like it's not over, like it is the show in town. That weekend it's not going to be the show in town in Vegas. Like it's just not. Like there's a billion other things to do there. And so I don't know, I think the conference title game loses its luster because then let's say bizarro weird scenario happens, but Maryland and Rutgers make the Big Ten title game, or Penn State and Maryland, which is relatively feasible, I think. Maybe not relatively. There's a non-0% chance of that happening. What the hell is the point of shipping everybody out there to play that game when you could play the game really so much closer? And I could think of 2 to 3 closer dome stadiums off the top of my head that are in Big Ten country that would get the job done.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. Moving on. Something new and exciting happened this weekend. For the first time ever, I believe, in maybe Penn State football's history. Well, maybe not ever in Penn State football's history because we don't know. But in the social media era, I guess we will call it the modern era of Penn State football, there was an open practice for fans at the Lash building. Steve, let's talk about it from the fan perspective first. Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea?
It's a great idea. I mean, it's a connection with your fans, the touch point. I'm surprised. Well, the weather was iffy, right, on Saturday, so I'm surprised the numbers weren't bigger. And it's also a revenue thing for the NIL folks, right? You get in early, you get the autograph session if you're in the NIL group. So, yeah, I mean, it had some pieces of Lift for Life to it, except it was actually really real as opposed to just, made for TV practice or made for consumption practice. So no, I think it's a great touch point. And it was nice to see the paranoia didn't win out. I mean, I don't know what happened, right? But for the most part, these kind of things don't happen because, oh my God, everybody's watching. Oh, somebody could send somebody. Oh, stop it, right? Practice what you're practicing. If you're doing something that's going to make you lose a game in those sessions because somebody saw 15 minutes of practice, you aren't coaching very well. So no, I think it was win all the way around.
Yeah, I think it was a good experience. I didn't go. I didn't see a ton of people that I knew that went, but it seemed like the feedback was positive. It seemed like it was well received. It's a good experience to kind of see that. I did think it was funny the video board, the new video board had that message about no video recording, but we just went to Steelers training camp a couple of weeks ago, and they there's several signs throughout the facilities that say please don't video record this. Again, like you said, outside of a trick play, which you wouldn't practice in that situation or in that development area. what are they going to see that any coach on film isn't going to see? So I think there were a couple of hints of that in the articles that I read today to kind of get caught up. Apparently the wide receivers were just running verticals a lot and things like that. But I good for James Franklin to let down his guard a little bit and let people in and have a easy win, low hanging fruit win for publicity's sake.
Right. I mean, even if they're running straight pass routes, right? And it's all vanilla. So what? People see it. Oh, I saw him at practice. Franklin works the line, slapping everybody's hands around the thing. It's all, rainbows and happiness. And it doesn't hurt the program in terms of the goodwill, because at the end of the day, beginning of the day, they're selling tickets. They're selling tickets. They're selling an emotion and a feeling to try to get those people to believe that they really care about them. So that someday they'll go to Las Vegas and watch a championship game. I mean, it's all one big long con of like entertainment, So
are we a part of that con? We're a part of that. I'm a part of that con. You've wised up, right?
No, I mean, yeah, I just think it's seeing it. Like, I would, if the weekend fell right, or something else, and you thought they weren't, this was, maybe they're not going to win. This is their chance to win the championship game, and they're going to have a tough draw the next time. Maybe you go to Vegas if you could find a cheap flight and pair it with, a concert or a show or something. But I think it's silly when sports organizations don't take the easy wins like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like for all the
annoys
practices and all the preparation and meetings and whatever else, to lose one practice, even if they didn't do everything they wanted to do, is a win in the long run. And not enough organizations do that kind of stuff.
No, that's 100%. I agree with that. You see that in the NHL a lot, where teams will open up their practices and fans will go. Like, I know people in DC go to the Caps one all the time, and it's just something to do, but it's a cool moment for you as a fan. So,
it's training camp, right? It's cheaper access to see the team. Well, and the other thing's coming too, right? They're having a fan academy they had signs for.
I saw that.
So kudos to them for that. That feels more like the thing they did for Football Eve 5 or 8 years ago, when they would do that in the stadium and teach people the cheers, and this is how we do that stuff, and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah.
Steve, all right, how about this? Let's cut a deal. If Penn State is the #1 ranked team in the country, the time that they go play in the Vegas Big Ten Championship, we will go. Deal? They have to be ranked in the country. They have to be ranked #1 in the country, and
in one poll or both polls? Any poll?
The playoff poll.
Okay. Oh, that's right. We're talking. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Sure. I've been to Vegas in a while. Why not?
All right. Perfect. All right. Last question or last thing. This week's old guy, young guy. Where was I going with this? This week's old guy, young guy is brought to you by the fan that sat behind me at the Pirates game this weekend.
Uh-oh.
So we went to the Pirates game this weekend. First time at the ballpark in at least 6 years, maybe 7 years, a little bit longer. Really like the upgraded stuff. They did move the pierogi stand to the other side of the stadium. That's over to the first base side. It used to be on the third base side, so that's an important call out. Anyways, we had a great time. Except the fan. I don't know if that's the proper term. The family that sat behind us was interesting. As you know, we went on Friday, which was the same night that the Steelers were playing. And I don't know if this guy was watching the Steeler game or what, but the entire game, he was sitting on his phone watching something, like watching sports. It sounded like football. And then they had a 3-year-old kid, I would say, and that child was also sitting on their phone watching something the entire time, which I understand, like, you parent however you want to and screen time and all of that. But my question to you is, what is the point, and maybe this is rhetorical, but what is the point of spending, let's call it, at least $150 to go sit on your phone and watch sports while another sporting event is happening?
I think it's rhetorical. Like, I think a lot more people do it now than used to, right?
Why?
Because you want to stay connected. You don't want to give up the.
Well, what are you missing?
I mean, even if it's the Steelers, I'm sorry, even if you're a diehard Steelers fan, it's a preseason game.
Yeah.
You're not learning anything. The most you could learn is if somebody gets hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to go to the Pirates game, go to the Pirates. I mean, be present at where you're at. Like, I mean, not to sound old and preachy, and not that I haven't snuck a phone here and there, but
I have no problem in between innings, even a couple of occasional in between pitches type thing, looking it down at your phone. Like I do it at Penn State football games. I go on at commercial breaks, I go on my phone type thing. It's just to kind of get caught up and see what's going on in the rest of the country. But I don't know. That's my
I mean, that's how people know stuff, right? I mean, the Penn State football games, that's how you know what's going on. If you can get the access to the internet, that's how you know what's going on other places, right? And that's how something bubbles through the crowd anymore. Oh, hey, this happened. Because, I mean, it's been a while. It's been Michigan, App State, right? Since like something's bubbled through the crowd at Beaver Stadium and people have been responding to it. I mean, sometimes it's out of town scores, but that's one of my pet peeves is like, that's not consistent. That would be one of the things I wanted to bounce off the guys last week is like, hey, you taking requests for stuff to change? Cause here's my list. Right. So yeah, there's staying aware with other stuff, but I think if you're there, be there for whatever it is.
There we go. That's our.
I was out there. You got there. We're going to tell you to sit down or something because you were cheering.
No, I was sitting there enjoying a baseball game. I had a nice beer and pierogies. Went and bought a helmet cup of ice cream, which was not cheap.
No, it wasn't.
It was not. And it's just like I don't know. I don't get the point. Like I don't get the point. So, anyways, other than that, that's about it. All right, let's recap. So, thank you to Johnny for joining the show. We've got a big announcement on Wednesday. Again, big, huge announcement. That's all I'm gonna say. And then let's see. I've got an email. It's Darian@stuffsummersays.com. Steve's got an email. It's
Steve@stuffsummersays.com.
We've got Twitter handles. Mine is @stuffsummersays. Steve's is
@SteveSampsel.
We've got a newsletter. You should sign up for that on our website, which is stuffsummersays.com. Other than that, 5 stars, thumbs up, all that jazz. Stay off your phones, kids. Okay, bye.